Over the coming half hour, we will challenge both CEOs and their CIOs on matters of the economy. Therefore, I've asked Peter Korsten, global thought leader at IBM, to join me in order to get the discussion running. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Korsten. Thanks, Peter. On stage, I would like to see here Gerrit Zalm, CEO ABN AMRO. Timo Huges, CEO Dutch Railways, Nederlandse Spoorwegen. Aloys Kregting, CIO at Royal DSM. Hessel Dikkers, CIO at NS. Frans, Woelders, the CIO at ABN AMRO. And Jeroen, Group CIO for Royal Philips. Gentlemen, you will all be seated. And if it's correct, we're all there. And immediately, Mr. Huges starts serving water. Thank you very much. Service-oriented, yes, absolutely. Gentlemen, before we start off with the discussion, and we'll let Peter Korsten introduce the first set of slides, we would also try to get DSM's Feike Sijbesma here on stage, but unfortunately, he's on a plane right now. But he left us this video message.
The world around us is changing, and DSM as well. We are adapting our portfolio. We are a different company than 5 or 10 years ago. We are expanding geographically. We are repositioning our management in different places in the world. We are growing also via the use of innovation. Innovation becoming a more important tool for the growth of our company. Using sustainability, not only as a core value of our company, but also as a key business driver. In that context, what do we expect of ICT? First of all, that ICT takes care that we can run our backbone, that we can run our operations globally in a constant and low-cost way. In terms of communication, very important, internally, especially when you expand internationally so much as we are doing, to communicate with all kinds of people around the world. Not only internally, but also with our customers, but also with NGOs and other stakeholders. In addition, maybe one of the most exciting parts is the use of IT in innovation and in terms of top-line growth. To be innovative, to find new business models, new ideas, new products, new services, due to the help of ICT tools. Where is the limit? That maybe is a discussion for all of us. Where is the limit? And what can we do more? I think the boundaries are given by our own imagination. Your ideas, our ideas of our organization, of our customers, of the partners we collaborate with. And there, those limits will define our future to make our company more successfully, whilst also contributing to a better world. And I'm very excited and very committed to go this route together with you further and to explore where the limits are. And for me, we have not yet reached them at all. A lot of future still to be developed together.
It was a statement by Feike Sijbesma, the CEO of DSM. Imagination was one of the words that rang through. Peter Korsten, let's start with the first theme. I would like to start the question round. Gentlemen, for you, I would like answers in 2 short sentences later on, please. So that's a little bit a training in order to get your message as short as possible over the stage. Peter, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bas. First of all, the background of what I'm going to share is interviews with 4,183 chief executive, chief information, marketing, supply chain, finance, and human resource officers. At the end of the day, you'll see the report. It's just come out. And what I'm going to do is just very briefly show some contrasting aspects of what chief executives have said with what chief information officers have said. First off, we ask the same question, and we're doing this research for about 10 years now, CEOs to pick the top 3 factors that are going to affect the future of their organization. And as you can see here, technology is at the top of the list of chief executive officers. That begs the question, where is technology in the minds of chief information officers? Well, the interesting news is they're clearly lagging behind. The CEO is leading the debate here. So, Bas, let's turn over to some questions.
Absolutely. The first question is for Mr. Gerrit Zalm, as a CEO. Mr. Zalm, it seems as though CEOs are ahead of the CIOs, as you see these pictures, in recognizing the importance of innovations. Could you give us an example of an important technological change, nearly there, within your company?
Well, I think that's especially mobile banking. Nowadays, we have 1 million visitors to our local branches a year. We also have 1 million visitors to our mobile banking platform, but that's every day. So that's a real change in the way we serve clients.
One of the challenges is to serve clients. Mr. Tas, you're there, over there. Philips, you have a lot of customers too. What do you do to keep your entire organization focused on those new technological opportunities?
Well, the biggest opportunity for us is the same as at ABN AMRO, engaging every day with every customer. And technology is the only way we can reach ultimately 3 billion customers, either through our medical devices, our healthcare propositions, our lighting propositions, and our consumer lifestyle propositions.
Thank you, Mr. Tas. Mr. Huges, you have a lot of customers also. You hope to serve them well. What should CIOs do, which they do not do today?
What they should do? He's sitting next to me. It's the year-end discussion. No, I think what they should do, or perhaps should do even more or even better, is that I think the customer intimacy is everything for us. And what I mean with that if you look at the past, we were operating trains, and what is our vision for the future is that we should give the traveler his own destination, the steer of his destiny, of his mobility in his own hands. And that means the travel information via apps, etc., that he can make the decisions and he get the information on an individual basis constantly when things change, when things differ. I think that's focusing primarily for the CIO what is important.
That's the focus the CIO should have. He nods, but let's go to another CIO. Mr. Woelders, you have this going. What should CEOs do, what they do not do today?
Well, I think I don't know the answer in general. I would say that my CEO, I think, is very engaged in the IT agenda, or let's say the combination of IT and business. And it actually shows also in the investment program I was briefly talking about last night. So I don't have a lot to wish for. Actually, the managing board and the CEO is very much involved in the subject, sees the importance of the subject, and wants to invest.
Okay. Let's skip over to Mr. Zalm. You heard this by Woelders. Are you actually interested in IT? What's your involvement as a CIO with the phenomenon?
Well, especially in strategy and setting priorities. So that, I think that is my role, and the role of the CIO is to implement, and of course also to be aware of all the surroundings outside the bank, but also inside the bank, and making something out of that.
But who leads the agenda? Is it you or is it your CIO?
Well, we have a rather democratic system.
Well, you're the only company in Holland that's democratic, Mr. Zalm.
Frans can come up with proposals, and the board has to make the decision.
And you say no.
Often we say yes. Yeah.
Okay. Let's skip over to Aloys Kregting as a CIO. Aloys, would you be glad with an answer like that if you got that from your CEO?
Yeah, of course, that's a desirable answer, I would think. So Frans must be happy with that. But I was thinking also that there must also be challenges. I'm a happy customer of ABN AMRO since approximately when I was born. So. But I was thinking you also see some new initiatives coming up, banks that are just developed only electronically. And of course you need an enormous budget to maintain your existing base. So how do you see that? Because you talked about the external world.
Well, we have to simplify our old big legacy systems, because they're very expensive and they're very costly. At the same time, we also have to innovate. And at the same time, we also have to deal with an enormous bunch of regulation coming over us, which will need a lot of changes in IT systems too. So we must end up with a far more flexible IT system, which is more immune towards all these regulatory changes. Because if there's one industry which is extremely regulated, it's the banking industry, and it's becoming worse and worse, and that will also have big implications for our IT systems.
Same goes for railways, I think, also regulated, Mr. Dikkers. Do you feel the same about what Zalm just said?
Well, we also have the same approach in terms of the standardization and all bring our complete legacy to the cloud. So we don't have to bother anymore about things like availability and cost and these kind of things. And we also create fruitful, also investment budgets to innovate.
But also you have regulators behind you. There's a big state that's watching over you. There's a parliament.
Well, we are not. It's a little bit different than in banking. So in the IT itself, they are less, let's say, focused on, and then more in general affairs in railway. Yeah.
Okay. We skip over, Peter, to the next set of slides, please.
Wonderful. So this came in as a surprise over time, and CIOs clearly, sometimes are maybe even hesitant to step up. So the call to action that we've heard from CEOs is that they'd like CIOs to approach them more often with more innovative ideas. So let's look at the second factor that we looked at, which is, again, from the Chief Executive Officer perspective, how well do you understand your customer today? And about 40% of chief executives said, we have a pretty good understanding of the needs, the wants, the desires, the aspirations of our customers. But, the majority, therefore, 60% say, we're not there. Well, the collective ambition of chief executives around the world across industries is that 80% of them want to have a high level of customer understanding 3 to 5 years from now. So a massive improvement, a deeper, intimate understanding, just like you heard all the morning speakers say, which is why the title of the study is the Customer Activated Enterprise. It's not to understand your customer, but to also involve your customer. Well, the good news here is that CIOs think almost exactly alike. The only group that we tested that was a little bit higher were the chief marketing officers. Anybody else? Supply chain, HR is behind. So here we see a par situation between CIOs and CMOs, CEOs and CIOs. So the question is, what are they both going to do about doubling the level of insight they have in their customers?
And that's what we're going to do. First, let us switch to another guest who is coming in right now, if everything works accordingly, because Jeroen is here, the CIO for Royal Philips, but thanks to BT and Philips, if it's all right, that's Mr. Frans van Houten. He's the CEO at Royal Philips. Mr. van Houten, welcome.
Happy to be there.
And you see all the other participants?
I see it very well, and it is a very exciting topic that you are discussing. Of course, for Philips, technology is hugely important, but the question is the right technology, and this is where the CIO actually, for me, comes in strongly.
Okay, you just heard Peter Korsten tell us about the level of digital savviness, as I may translate maybe. What do you do to become even closer to your customers?
Well, we are living in a very fast-changing world, and speed is very important. Understanding the needs of customers is very important. Jeroen and I are transforming Philips to be a real-time company that is constantly in touch with its customers, and technology will help us have a new delivery model, a new business model, where no longer we just make products, but Philips will be in the delivery of healthcare services, in lighting services, and therefore we need to redesign the architecture of the company so that we can enable that.
Thank you. Mr. Woelders, as a CIO, what do you do to get to know your customers better as well as their customers?
I think we have a number of initiatives in that field that we are experimenting with. So I think for a bank, number one is privacy. So it means that your data has to be safe. Everything needs to be safe. So if we are moving in a certain direction, we will always do it with client consent and not just use their data without their consent. But you can think of the combination of location-based services. So we did an experiment, for instance, that you, when you are at Schiphol, that you get a message from the bank reminding you of your payments profile. Nowadays, you can switch off your payment and your card outside of the Netherlands, you get a reminder. We see that you're at Schiphol. Do you want to change your payment profile? As an example.
Okay, we need some other examples too, but what we see nowadays, and we heard this morning, all morning really, is that the customer is empowered. He holds devices. He's got 3 things he can react to. He can really interact with you as a company. Mr. Van Houten, are you worried about the power of this individual customer? Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, the customer certainly has power. Of course, the customer has always had it. We do a lot of crowdsourcing with our customers in understanding their needs. We have surgeons helping us to redesign how we deliver solutions for heart failure. We have consumers telling us that they would like to see changes to the product. By engaging, you make it positive. On the flip side, if you ignore them, I think a company can quickly lose their relevance.
Yeah.
So this online dialogue, always on real time, is extremely important.
Okay, let's flip over to Mr. Huges. As a CEO, the new CEO for NS, what's about to change in that respect? Because you have a lot of customers and there's a lot of people that aren't always very happy about your level of service.
You say perfectly well. You aren't always very too happy, but I think what is important to give 2 examples. On a daily basis, we constantly do surveys and track what our customers are doing. And for example, at the stations, we run roughly 400 shops at the stations, from the Starbucks to the Albert Heijn to go's, etc. And by following these customers, we know exactly how long they are in a shop. So also the way we model our shops, that we know they are only there for 7 minutes to buy something from the Albert Heijn to go. It's the NS people who serve them over there. And at the same time that we develop new ways with new cash machines, how they cannot, let's say, type in their PIN code, but immediately only show there to a RF sensor, and also together with the banks. So go through the process that they can use in a valuable time, use them at the station correctly. And a second, I think, very interesting new development is that we can monitor via the heat sensors when people enter into trains, how many people are in which part of a train. So whenever we get via Twitter or social media or surveys, complaints that the trains are overloaded, for example, we know that in real essence it's not true, because they are dense in a certain area in the train. And at the same time, we give them an app. So if you enter a train, the app will tell you exactly where free seats are and where no free seats are. So that's all the initiatives we take based on information we get from our customers.
Yeah, and technological innovation. Mr. Kregting, as a CIO, who knows the customer better, you think? The CIO or the CEO?
I think the customer knows the customer best. And we only try to get a view of the world. And I think I'm very much in favor of what Louis already mentioned. Everything will be digitally remastered, and even for companies that do not produce end consumer goods, because we deliver to companies like these, we also need to know our customers, even the final consumer. And what we see now is that if you really fundamentally redesign your organization around a digital 360 view, I mean, the insights that you create and the customer-facing time that you create are doubling at least. So that's a very insightful period that we are in at the moment.
Do you agree, Mr. Woelders, or is that something in Kregting's verhaal where you say, well...
Well, I think that Mr. Zalm already said something about it, because I think it is reshaping banking. Yeah? It is clearly reshaping banking, and we are in the middle of that.
Yes, but my question was, who knows the customer better, the CIO or the CEO?
Then I think the CEO knows customers best. I think the role of the CIO is to provide insights and to provide information towards the business. Yeah? And I think you have to work together on those solutions. But of course, the data is within the systems, and for that reason, you could say that the CIO knows the customer best. But we are, of course, in this way serving the business.
But still, in the lead is the CEO. Zalm knows the customer best. Mr. Zalm, that's a big compliment, but is it true?
No, it's not true.
Who said no, it's not true?
I
Frans van Houten.
said
Yeah, Mr. van Houten.
let's just be honest here. The world is changing so rapidly. We always thought that we knew our customers and we had salespeople and then the CEO could meet with a few people. But the amount of people that you really were able to touch was actually quite limited. So on a very small sample, you thought that you knew the world. But in the digital world, with big data and deep data analytics, you can actually learn about thousands and millions of customers, which was never possible on the scale of human contact, where you stepped in a plane and you visited the customer and you went home and you felt really satisfied. So now in a real-time world, enabled by the CIO, we get a much better understanding of the customer. So we need to be honest, the CIO is becoming far more important in the company than ever before.
So now, Gerrit Zalm will say, yes, that's the correct answer, Mr. Zalm.
I think so.
Thank you.
And the CIO should make it possible for the CEO to know the customer best.
Absolutely. Oh, that's going to be cozy in the boardroom at ABN AMRO, yes. Gentlemen, one more thing. I would like to know, Mr. Dikkers, what aspect changes the most in technological, because of technological, this is the word I can't pronounce, technological changes like social media, big data, analytics, and so forth. Which aspect in dealing with the customer changes most, you think?
Well, in our situation, we have two big trends. The first is the mobile, the fact that everybody has a mobile at the moment in the train. So that makes it possible to have personalized connection with our customers. That was not possible before. And the second thing is that we are rolling out now the smart card, the public transport smart card system, that also creates a lot of data about the customer. Of course, also within the limitations of the privacy, but that also has a lot of possibilities to bring one-on-one propositions to our customers. So those are the two key trends in my view.
Okay, what aspect changes within your company, Aloys, Kregting? Because DSM used to be a very business to consumer or consumer to business market, but gradually you're changing to become sort of a retail-oriented company also. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're right, and I think that's a transformation, and I think the least we should do as CIOs is lead that transformation. And
which aspect changes most there in your company?
I think what in our case, what changed the most is that people now feel really connected. I mean, we have now the CIO or CEO of Philips sitting somewhere on the planet, we don't even know where, and it's just becoming normal. From the plane it's still difficult, otherwise Feike would also be here. But you see that by giving people in the company, also from different ages, you have to give them an experience which changes their mental model. And we have the tools and the means to actually show those examples. We did a couple of things in that area, and it changed the way that people work and how they live.
What did you change?
Now, what we changed, for example, I can give, of course, many examples, but then I have the electrical chair that will kick in.
Or a transparent suit, eh?
Oh, no, that will not be good for everybody here. But for example, what we did is that we made it possible that everybody, and basically it's simple, everybody can talk to everybody all the time, 24/7. And you can pull in people, you can even use the old-fashioned telephone system also to dial people into a video conference or whatever. And that changed the scope of people, because I think that innovation in the end is collaboration times creativity. Now, creativity still needs to come from people like Daan and so forth, but the connectivity and the collaboration is something where we as CIOs play a fundamental role in.
And imagination, how important is imagination, Jeroen does?
I think it all starts with visualizing the experience you want to give to your customer. You know, really showing what can be done. Create that imagination that Daan talked about. And we have a great design organization that we team up with. We bring in research, and collaboratively we work with the business to visualize, to experience what it can be for our customers. We bring in customers, and jointly we do new things that nobody imagined before, and you can only do it if you bring these disciplines together. You have design looking at it, IT looking at it, and together we create what nobody could imagine singly.
Once more going back to the voice from somewhere else. Mr. van Houten? Frans van Houten? Was this a lie or was this true?
No, this is absolutely true. But it also means that the way you create a value proposition has to change. You know, in the past, marketeers would make a requirement specification, and then the engineers would make it, and it would take 24 months, and then you would hope it was right. In the way that Jeroen just described, you go to an agile way of development, where you get cross-functional teams doing rapid prototyping, and all the time testing it with lead customers to see, is this what they want? So there's a strong engagement both inside the company as well as with the customer in order to come with breakthrough value propositions that weren't possible before.
Yes, collaboration and imagination, 2 key words. Thank you. Peter, your last set of slides, please.
So it's all well and fine and interesting to see that technology is important, that we want to understand our customer better, but what are people really going to change in their daily life? That also was a question. And so the question here is, what are you going to do less and what are you going to favor going forward? Let's first look at the responses of the chief executive officers. They had like 10 categories. Here are the top 3 things that changed to the positive and the bottom 3 things that changed to the negative. And if you take the extremes, you see that CEOs say collectively we should spend much less time, and it's -7%, but on a very full agenda, you still have to maintain time. We should spend much less time on IT systems and operations, the basics, and we need to invest time massively in customer experience management. And so it will not come as a surprise that many people would agree to that. In particular, I mentioned them before, the chief marketing officers. But here, a big compliment comes to our friends, the chief information officers, because they get that message even better. They do understand. Let's spend less time on the mundane, the day-to-day jobs, find ways to not spend time and money on it, and invest it massively. That's 15% of your 60, 78-hour work week. That's 68 hours per week on managing the customer experience and taking that time away day to day from the mundane things. With that, back to you, Bas.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, enlightening. Really nice to see that IT systems and operations are considered a commodity. Am I right, Mr. Huges? Hardware, running things, that's a commodity just like power and water.
I think more and more. I think it's also very important for the CIO to acknowledge that and to make sure that he also has a vision and an inspiration that it's all about the customer, because the way he acts and the way he forms teams from outside in is also important for his teams, how they will develop and how they, like Frans said, on a collaborative way, define and introduce new products or new services.
Okay, Mr. Zalm, do you agree about the time the CIO spends on this? Peter just calculated a bit, 6 to 8 hours on client management, customer management, a week for a CIO. Does that work, or does he need less time to do that in order to focus on the things he really has to do?
I'm afraid that for banks, and especially ABN AMRO, systems will still be a major issue, because we really have to renovate our basic systems, and that will be a project which will take a few years. So probably Frans will just have to work longer, because he will have to spend more time also on the systems.
So, Mr. Woelders.
The answer is not a surprise.
But Mr. Dikkers, it would be very gratuitous to ask this to Mr. Woelders. Do you feel your time is changing, your work days are changing in that respect, as we just saw from the CIO study?
Absolutely. I think absolutely. Currently we have something to do still in legacy, but I think it will be over in 1 or 2 years' time, and then we can invest more and more to the customer. And another thing we have in our situation is that with the operation of trains, there's a lot of also IT in that to make that more successful. So that's another area we also have to invest in a lot.
Yeah, I already asked a bit, but drilling a bit deeper, what should you do less in the near future? What can be left to other units within the business units within the company?
Well, it's not in the business units, more outside Dutch railway. So what we're doing, we're now implementing a cloud platform when we will migrate all our applications to the cloud. So that gives also more easiness also in running that IT operation.
Mr. Kregting, what should the CIO leave to others in the future?
Very good question, because you're still responsible for it, so you can never outsource your responsibility. But I think indeed we have apparently set up an ecosystem as suppliers and customers, and apparently that's very labor intensive. So if we want to give more to vendors, it also means that we need to do that in a more efficient way and also in a more reliable way, because still today we see that as a CIO you often have to step into operational issues. And yeah, if those issues would be much lower, then you can really focus on the value-adding stuff. And they are tremendous, the value-adding stuff, as we have many examples.
Yeah. Mr. Van Houten, on what should every CIO spend more time, you feel?
Well, first of all, I agree that the CIO still needs to make sure that the operations run, but he needs to assemble a very good team to do that. I see the CIO as the thought leader of what ICT can bring to the business. Many businesses need to make the shift from the analog to the digital world, to the online world, where business models are changing. And I see the CIO engaging with business leaders on their business strategy, rather than on their IT needs.
So that's quite a responsibility. Mr. Dikkers, do you feel that responsibility, or is there any tension between what Frans van Houten just said and your role as a CIO? So you have to be an innovation partner and a CIO, get the stuff running, but also look at the other agenda.
Well, that makes it attractive, to be clear.
Yeah. So you have to work harder as well.
Of course. So that's for me anyway. That's also the nice thing of being a CIO. You are living in different worlds, and the worlds are changing, and that makes it very interesting.
And do you see yourself as an innovation partner?
Yeah.
The hub within the company for innovation?
Yeah, I think that's to build ecosystems and also to create a climate and inspirational environment where we can innovate as a company, because it's not only IT, it's actually in partnership with the business. That's our main, my main, I think, theme for the coming years.
And is that your theme as well, Mr. Tas? Because it is something to be the innovation starter of the company, whilst at the same time being able to get all the IT running.
Well, I think that's why I love my job. And I think what Frans said, it is about the team. You know, you don't need to do everything yourself. You need to assemble a great team that can take on all these responsibilities. I think it's clear from this whole session today that our big opportunity is now. Either we step in and we generate the IT that creates great solutions and creates revenue for the company, or somebody else will step in and your role as CIO will diminish. So it's do or die.
Yes, and it's all about competences. Let's look at the future. Mr. Zalm, what new competences should the CIO bring to the table to be more successful even in the near future?
I think what is extremely important, apart from the IT knowledge, is that the CIO is able to communicate, to cooperate, and also to co-create. Not only co-creation with outside vendors, but also with the inside business people. And so these 3 C's would be very much important for the future.
And does it mean they're still lacking that a bit, that communication part?
No, I think that has improved tremendously as far as I can judge, because I can only judge the last 5 years. There's far more collaboration and also better communication between business and IT. And that also means that you can go much faster in innovating, because in the old days the business described all the demands, and then IT came up with something and it was always wrong, and then they had to send it back again. So this co-creation, scrubbing, as they also call it, is a new way of working. That means that you also must be able to have those skills in communicating and cooperating.
So the CIO doesn't need to be an IT professional by profession, Mr. Huges. What other competences can you fill in on that list that Zalm just gave?
I think what is very important, he should have a very wide view on the total business, and not only on the business of our own company, but if I take a tangible example, for NS, we have been moving mobilizing people, passengers from station to station, and a view for the, let's say, coming years is mobilize them from door to door. And there we rely on different public transport companies where the CIO should think it's not only a logistics flow of people, it's also an information flow, it's a commercial flow, it's an administrative flow, and that should all be seamless throughout the complete chain. I think if he, my right hand, doesn't have that view, he's not the right person.
You're warned. For the last question, it's the hardest question, but you get it, Mr. Van Houten, because you're not here, and you're somewhere else. Where are you, actually?
I'm on an off-site meeting with my executive board in Eindhoven.
You have a bosdag, as we call that.
Yes, exactly.
Could you give us a golden tip for CIOs and CEOs at this moment?
I think I'd like to just give you a few words. Be bold. The world around you is changing rapidly, and you will have to be prepared to take risk and experiment with the new technology that is available. So be bold, and by teaming up between the CIO and the CEO, I think you can do amazing things.
And go boldly where no man has gone before. Huh?
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a lovely panel. I hope you liked the discussion. Frans Woelders, Mr. Dikkers, Mr. Hugens, Mr. Zalm, Mr. Tas, Mr. Kregting, and Mr. Van Houten. Thank you very much.